Few mountain men have ever rivaled Jedediah Smith's epic adventures on the wild frontier. He's crisscrossed America's untamed wilderness, surviving attacks by wild animals and ferocious battles with Native American warriors. But having set out on one of the greatest journeys in American history, he faces his most dangerous enemies yet: exhaustion, heat, and thirst.
Mr. Evans! Make it deep.
Smith and two companions have survived on scraps of food for weeks, but now have gone several days without water.
For God's sake, I'm not dead yet.
Be still, Mr. Evans. The dirt will provide some protection from the sun.
Please, Mr. Smith, I must have water.
Mr. Gold and I are going right now to find water.
But what if there's no water out there?
Then, if it is God's will, we shall all meet again very soon. In heaven.
Driven by an explorer's spirit, guided by his faith, Jedediah Smith has seen more of the vast American West than any adventurer on Earth. The question now is whether he'll survive to tell the tale of his amazing journey, or face an agonizing death alone in the desert.
Kit Carson is probably the most famous of all the mountain men. But most historians agree that Jedediah Smith was the most important of all the mountain men.
When you try to get your brain around the life of a person like Jedediah Smith, it's almost impossible.
He actually traveled more miles exploring than Lewis and Clark did. And some would say almost double.
Smith is engaged in a journey that puts Odysseus to shame. How anyone could have survived this ordeal is just absolutely amazing.
Like fellow mountain men Tom Fitzpatrick and Jim Bridger, Smith's frontier career begins with the expedition of William Ashley, later known as Ashley's 100.
In 1822, William Ashley ran ads in the St. Louis newspapers where he was calling for 100 men to go to the Rocky Mountains.
Smith is hired as a hunter, which means that he doesn't have to sit around camp all day. He's expected to go out and find food for the men in the brigade.
Jedediah Smith was very interested in making money, but he was also very interested in exploration for exploration's sake.
From his early days on the frontier, Smith is an accepted and important member of the brigade. But he also stands out among his roughneck fellow trappers by being a highly disciplined man of devout Christian faith.
Well, the mountain men are famous for tall tales and for bragging about how much they can drink and how many animals they've killed and how many men they've killed. Jedediah Smith wasn't that way at all. He didn't fit the mold. He's very quiet, introspective, reflective.
Smith's ambitions on the frontier are inspired by the remarkable journey of Lewis and Clark less than 20 years before.
The first edition of the Lewis and Clark journals come out in 1814, and one of his tutors gives him a copy of that. And I think that captures Jed's imagination, and it instills a desire to want to explore and wanting to follow in their footsteps.
And as Smith's remarkable career begins, he can hardly imagine he'll come to explore more of the frontier than Lewis and Clark themselves. Smith's first year on the frontier is going well. But on June 2nd, 1823, the fortunes of the Ashley Henry expedition take a dramatic turn for the worse.
Ashley and his men were on the Missouri River in what is present-day South Dakota, and they were meeting with the Arikara Indians to try and buy horses. A conflict developed, and Ashley and his men were attacked by these Arikara Indians. Jedediah Smith and his fellows were out in the open.
Stay here. Stay low.
As the trappers prepare for another attack,
Go now.
Smith crosses hundreds of miles of hostile wilderness to bring back reinforcements, cementing his reputation as a brave and reliable frontiersman.
It became apparent that Jedediah Smith was a good leader of men and one who was very valuable to William Ashley.
After the Arikara disaster, Ashley understands that they're not going to be able to use the Missouri River anymore to bring supplies up or down. And so Smith and 7 others head out west on their way to the mountains where they hope they can get a place to trap beaver.
But as Smith is quickly learning, on the frontier, each new adventure comes with new peril.
Bear. I'll distract him. Stay back.
And with his men in danger, Smith instantly tries to draw the bear's attention to himself.
Jed, look out! Take cover!
The massive grizzly takes Smith's head in its mouth. But just as it's about to crunch down, extinguishing Smith's life, the bear drops him and retreats.
Smith's companions drive off the bear with rifle fire.
Jed, you're God.
But the damage has already been done.
Let's move him.
Smith knows if his dreadful wounds aren't quickly cleaned and dressed, he could well die of an infection.
Someone could please start cleaning the wound with water.
There's no laudanum. There's no morphine.
Hurry!
He doesn't drink. There's not even whiskey.
Does anyone have a needle and thread at all?
I do, sir. But only the most common sort.
Then please grab it at once.
So Jedediah Smith takes control of the situation.
He also knows he'll be awake for the entire excruciating ordeal.
Hang in there. So he's instructing them in the middle of all this trauma. He's the guy who's kept his cool enough to save his own life.
Well, it ain't the prettiest thing you ever see. I've done as nice as I could, sir.
I'm sure you have, Mr. Clannon. And I thank you for it.
Incredibly, just 10 days after the brutal attack, Smith is back on his feet, eager to resume trapping and exploring the vast frontier. In just 4 years, Jedediah Smith has passed every test the frontier has thrown at him and taken full advantage of the opportunities it offers. Even though he's making his fortune as a trapper, an opportunity arises that will dramatically change the course of his life.
Jedediah! There you are, my good man.
Mr. Ashley. Good to see you, sir.
You as well. As you know, I'm leaving to St. Louis soon. There's a matter I'd like to discuss with you.
So in 1826, while still a very young man, Jedediah Smith gets an extraordinary opportunity. He's been working with Ashley and Henry for a long time, and they're really wanting to get out of the business.
Jedediah Smith took over from Ashley in the field. Ashley was still going to bring them supplies and buy their fur, and they have an agreement.
Under the terms of the contract, Smith will meet Ashley at next year's rendezvous to deliver what they hope will be a rich haul of furs. But for Jedediah Smith, the agreement with Ashley serves an even grander ambition. Having been one of the first men over the South Pass of the Rockies, Smith now wants to explore an entirely new part of the frontier.
He's a good businessman, but his vision is elsewhere. He sees himself as an explorer. Smith is going to go in search of new beaver country, but even more so in search of new routes to the west.
Native Americans have inhabited the arid deserts of the Southwest for generations. But for the intrepid men of what becomes known as the Smith Expedition, this region is a complete mystery.
He decides to head down to the area of the Great Salt Lake and beyond. And it's basically just been discovered. So it's really new territory in terms of exploration.
Smith's frontier experience has taught him that the wilderness can test a man's courage and will at any moment. But nothing he's experienced can prepare him for the incredible adventure that lies ahead. Frontiersman Jedediah Smith is leading one of the most ambitious journeys into the West ever undertaken, venturing hundreds of miles into unmapped wilderness that almost no white man has ever seen before.
Smith leads his party out of the rendezvous area across to the Great Salt Lake, and then down the Jordan River, through Utah.
From this point onwards, the Smith expedition will traverse regions known only through rumors and tall tales. Their first milestone is the Jordan River in modern-day Utah, which resembles familiar trapping regions to the north.
Smith and his brigade first left the rendezvous. Things were going okay.
We'll camp here. That area is relatively wet, relatively lush in terms of the growth, the greenery, the willows and the trees.
Look at this view, Mr. Goble. Amazing place.
I'll be.
It's worth the walk, Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Indeed.
But as they move south, they reach the edges of a barren landscape completely unlike anything they've experienced before.
The beaver begins to dry up, and that's not the only thing that dries up. The desert they find themselves in now, it's something they really weren't prepared for. It's punishing, arid landscape.
Ooh. Keep alert, Mr. Evans, and watch for any movement ahead. Both water and game could be at a premium. Yes, Mr. Smith.
Smith's concern about finding food and water is well-founded. As the terrain grows increasingly desolate, just as their supplies begin to run low.
Here's the lasso.
As they move further to the south, the game plays out because the landscape is becoming harsher, more rocky, more desert-like.
There wasn't any buffalo. There wasn't any big masses of protein for them to be knocking down.
Yet with a journey of unknown duration still lying ahead, Smith and his men will have to survive on anything they can catch.
That's not what I hoped. We'll provide some sustenance.
This is the last of the buffalo. I saved your portion.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Divide it amongst the rest of the men along with the serpent.
But surely you must be as hungry as the rest of us.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Here, Mr. Goebel.
Thank you.
It's yours.
Weeks into their journey, the men of the Smith expedition are hungry and exhausted. Yet as difficult as the journey has become, the most dangerous part has yet to begin. More than 500 miles from their starting point, Smith's expedition reaches the Colorado River and finds the first other people they've seen for weeks.
Oh.
But Smith has no way of knowing whether these Native Americans will welcome them as friends.
Stay where you are. Do not move.
Or attack his starving men as enemies. After a nearly 600-mile journey through the punishing deserts of the Southwest, Jedediah Smith and his expedition have been pushed to the brink of starvation.
Whoa. Whoa.
Now Smith will find out whether the Mojave Indians will save his expedition or end it for good.
Make no threatening gestures. We come as friends. Goebel, give me the cloth.
Smith is very realistic in his approach to Native peoples. He's wary, but he also understands that they're critical to the success of the fur traders and the trappers. So it's with great trepidation that he meets the Mojave.
His soft-spoken manners, combined with gifts, turn these potential enemies into valuable friends.
All right, gentlemen, mind your manners.
Well, the Mojave essentially rescue Smith's party, and they get to rest, they get some food, and then they also get directions.
Matsubi naze. Eba seja.
You understand any of this? He's saying on the other side of this desert is California. Abaseja.
Eba seja. California.
Smith has only a vague idea of where California actually lies, and no map of the route has ever been drawn. But he now realizes he can attempt a feat no American has done before: reach the Mexican province of Alta California by traveling overland.
From talking to the Mojave, he concluded that they were fairly close to the California missions. And given the fact that Utah and Arizona had turned out so bad, that it was better to go on to California.
For an intrepid explorer like Smith, the decision is easy, even though the journey involves crossing a desert of unknown size. In the autumn of 1826, Jedediah Smith and his men, led by 2 native guides, begin their historic trek across the Mojave Desert.
No one had crossed the United States and gone all the way to California before Jedediah Smith. But with the addition of these guides and the promise that he can get to California in 10 days or so, he decides to go for it.
Once they reach the Mojave Desert, you might as well be on the surface of the moon. It is very dry, and it's only through the assistance of Mojave Indians that they're able to make their way slowly and tortuously toward California.
After a 2-week trek, Smith and his party become the first Americans to reach Mexican California by traveling overland.
Let's go.
After he's come out of the Mojave Desert and comes down into the San Bernardino area, he starts to see civilization.
Detener! Hey.
But compared to the welcome he received from the Mojaves, Smith's reception at the mission of San Gabriel comes as a rude shock.
They are aliens, there's no doubt about it. And they are invading Mexican territory.
My friends! Please. Please.
We have traveled a great distance from America to get here. We humbly ask that you extend God's mercy and allow us to rest a while.
You are most welcome here. But, please.
If we were to surrender our weapons, oughtn't they do the same?
Hey, calma. Hey, stand down. And we have come in peace, and we shall keep the peace. Let's place our weapons in the cart. Stand down, Mr. Evans.
Father Sanchez doesn't just welcome these bedraggled, worn, torn travelers. He feeds them and takes care of them and makes them feel at home.
While Smith and his men aren't in physical danger, every day they spend as unwilling guests in California delays their return to the trappers' rendezvous.
You are watching for snakes.
Why, are you hungry?
Come on, Mr. Smith.
And when an emissary of the Spanish governor arrives, Smith suspects his troubles are only getting worse.
Father Sanchez may be welcoming, but the authorities to the south are absolutely not. All the land that's been lost by Spain in North America has been lost to these Americans, and the Mexicans know good and well that they're the target.
Your Excellency, as I've said before, we are trappers. We hunt for animals, and then we sell the fur. Now, this is my trapper license and a record of our journey so far.
This document, who gave it to you?
It was issued to me by my government.
Your government sent you here to spy on us?
No, Your Excellency. I came here of my own accord. Nobody sent me here.
And this map, who is it for?
They're for educating people to share so that other people may have a better understanding of this beautiful country of yours.
You would have me believe that you came all this way to draw pretty pictures? You may return to the mission of San Gabriel. In fact, I must insist upon it. And you will stay there until I decide what is to be done with you.
No, Your Excellency, please. You have the wrong impression.
Now, with his fate resting in the governor's hands, all Smith can do is pray he hasn't reached the end of his journey or his life as a free man. Jedediah Smith has become the first American to travel overland from the Rocky Mountains all the way to the Mexican territory of Alta California.
Let's go.
But his presence has aroused the suspicion of the Mexican authorities, leaving the fate of his expedition and even his freedom hanging in the balance.
You may return to the mission of San Gabriel, and you will stay there until I decide what is to be done with you.
Essentially, they're under house arrest. The governor's very suspicious. He doesn't believe that they're just there trapping. In fact, at one time, it looked like Smith was going to be sent down to Mexico City in chains.
Mr. Smith, from the governor.
But after being detained against his will for 6 agonizing weeks, Smith finally receives the news he's been hoping for.
Oh, Father, I must be going now. but I'll never forget your kindness.
Fortunately for Smith, his timing happens to be good. There's a ship from Boston in the harbor, and that ship's captain is able to vouch for Smith, showing documents that prove that Smith is in fact the famous frontiersman and not an American spy.
Que Dios te bendiga, mi hijo, y te regrese a casa sano y salvo.
Smith and his men are free to leave California, but only if they agree to the governor's conditions.
The Mexican officials came up and said, we want you to go back the way you came and don't stop.
But Jedediah Smith hasn't crossed an entire continent just to return empty-handed. His mission is to seek out new trapping regions and return with as many beaver pelts as possible.
Well, Smith is not about to follow the instructions of the governor of California.
I do believe that direction is north, Mr. Smith.
Well, indeed it is, Mr. Goebel.
When he gets to the trail that's going to take him on north, instead of going east, he continues on north.
But were we not told to leave California the same way we came?
We are. Now, having entered California through these very hills and returning to them, I believe we've complied with the governor's orders. Therefore, unless any of you have a curious desire to head back through the desert, we shall proceed north, where we have some reasonable hope of finding beaver, game, and a more agreeable journey home. Now, come on, let's go. Burn daylight.
He wants to open up new economic opportunities for the trappers, of course, for his company, but also open up new vistas for the rest of the country. He's trying to scout out California so he can tell that story when he gets back east.
Leading his brigade north, Smith skirts the edge of the Mojave Desert, then crosses the Tehachapi mountain range into the San Joaquin Valley.
He heads north into the Valley of California, and indeed they find rich beaver country, and they start trapping. And this is just what he was hoping for.
By early May, Smith's men have harvested 1,500 pounds of beaver pelts, worth $9,000 at the rendezvous, almost $200,000 today. But with the July Trappers Rendezvous fast approaching, Smith needs a direct route towards the Great Salt Lake to arrive in time.
Like so many explorers before him, Smith had hoped to find a river that would lead through the mountains and give easy access. Well, it's not there. And so he has no choice except to cross the Sierra Nevada.
The forbidding Sierra Nevada mountains run unbroken for more than 400 miles, reaching 14,000 feet in altitude. And the Sierras contain treacherous ravines that retain deep snow, even into summer.
We know that the Sierra are the soul-breaking part of the American frontier. That's where the most rugged mountain peaks in the American West are, and no good passes.
Smith knows crossing the mountains will be dangerous at best, and deadly at worst. But it's also the only way he can reach the rendezvous on time.
Well, if I'm to make it back in time to honor my commitment, I must attempt another crossing. I can see no other way.
And to move as fast as possible, he asks only two men, Robert Evans and Silas Goebel, to travel with him.
For better or worse, I've made my decision. Now, you must make your own.
Well, we've made our decision, Mr. Smith, and, well, we're with you.
For better or worse.
And now Smith, Evans, and Goebel decide they're going to be the first people to travel over the Sierra Nevada eastbound. They start heading east, climbing up the Sierra Nevada, and they make 10 miles one day, maybe 5 miles the next day.
Smith, Evans, and Goebel are making steady progress. But 5 days into the journey, the weather takes an ominous turn.
It starts snowing on the 25th of May, 1827. And the next day, it snows all day long. They don't know what's going to happen. And they wonder, is this going to be the end? It's a rough night for these guys. And these are tough guys. But sure enough, the morning comes, the storm is cleared.
After 8 brutal days, Jedediah Smith and his men make history yet again, this time as the first Americans to cross the Sierra Nevada mountains. Yet even as one ordeal is ending, an even harsher one begins, as Smith contemplates crossing the most ferocious desert in all of North America. After becoming the first Americans to cross the Sierra Nevada mountains, Jedediah Smith's expedition has reached the Great Basin in modern-day Nevada. It's 190,000 square miles of scorching, barren desert where few white men have ever ventured before. But with less than a month remaining to reach the Trappers' Rendezvous, it's a barrier they must cross.
Well, you make it through the mountains and you think, what a triumph, what a success. And then as far as the eye can see, it's just moonscape. It's larger, it's longer, it's drier. It's worse than the Mojave Desert. And there's no guides, there's nobody to help you along, to point you in the right direction. And so they're on dead reckoning as they head toward the east. In the mountains, you had too much water, and that almost killed you. Now you're down in the desert, you have no water, and now that could kill you.
Stop. Take a bit of water. Hey, come on. You mustn't drink it all. Until we find another water source, it's vital we conserve what we have. Now let's go.
Severely limited by how much water they can carry, Smith, Goebel, and Evans know their survival depends on finding more, and soon.
They're watching for places where there's any kind of growth. So as they're crossing the Great Basin, they're looking for some evidence of a spring by the vegetation that's around there.
And while lack of water can kill relatively quickly, lack of food is potentially just as fatal.
In the mountains, there's all kinds of waterfowl along creeks and rivers and lakes. You got the deer and the buffalo and the elk. Very, very different from what the Great Basin was like. If you're not looking for mice and lizards and rabbits, you're not going to find much to eat.
That's the last of it.
What will we eat tomorrow?
Whatever we can.
There's been nothing living out in the basin, so finally, unfortunately, they have to kill their emaciated horses and feast on them.
Despite Smith's unfaltering resolution, his companions reached the limits of their endurance 3 weeks into the grueling march. And Robert Evans, Smith's hardy companion since the journey began the previous year, could go no further.
Mr. Evans! You okay? You got any water? No.
Sorry. I can't go any further.
Smith instantly decides on a risky plan that might save his friend's life.
Help me start digging.
They know they're going to have to leave Evans behind, and he's going to be completely at the mercy of the elements and whatever else comes along.
Come on. Stay with us, Mr. Evans. Stay with us.
They actually dig a shallow pit and cover him.
Mr. Evans?
For God's sake, I'm not dead yet.
Be still, Mr. Evans. You must conserve your strength. The sand will provide some protection from the sun.
They actually cover it to protect him in hopes that they can find water and come back and save him.
What if there's no water out there?
Then, if it is God's will, we shall all meet again very soon in heaven.
Utterly exhausted and severely dehydrated, Evans may have only hours to live.
If you would. My rifle, please.
You must have faith, Mr. Evans. Without it, we shall all be lost.
And despite his confident words, if Smith doesn't find water soon, all three men will die a painful death under the hellish sun. Jedediah Smith, Robert Evans, and Silas Goebel have been trekking across the Great Basin Desert, racing to reach the Trappers' Rendezvous in modern-day Utah.
Stay with us, Mr. Evans. Stay with us. You got any water?
Oh, no.
But after running out of water, Evans is the first of the three to succumb to the unbearable heat.
We shall all meet again very soon in heaven.
After partially burying Evans to protect him from the desert sun, Smith and Goebel hurry away to find water before all of them suffer a lingering death.
Smith's knowledge of the land is critical here. He sees in the distance sort of a fuzzy black dark shape, which he recognizes as a small mountain. Usually if there's mountains, there's water.
And at the very end of their endurance, Smith and Goebel can only pray they found the water they desperately need.
What is it, Jed?
Look over there.
So they direct themselves there, and indeed, they find a spring.
It's real. It's gloriously real.
For a spiritual man like Smith, finding water in their last extremity is nothing less than a miracle.
Nature's hostile, but it's not personal. But the creek that brings you the drink of water may drown you the next week. So what happened yesterday doesn't matter. You don't care about what happens tomorrow. You're totally focused on the now.
Get us.
Smith and Goebel know they've gotten a reprieve from certain death. Now they can only hope they can save Evans's life as well. But the sound of a rifle shot fills them with dread that Evans may have ended his own suffering.
It's been fired. Evans! Evans! Mr. Evans! Evans!
Mrs. Smith, have you any water?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have plenty of water. We heard a shot. I thought perhaps you had lost faith after all.
Oh, that. No, I never lost faith, Mrs. Smith. I thought it couldn't hurt to help guide you back to my position. Now, Could you give me that other kettle?
Evans drank the whole 5 or 6 quarts of water at one time. And this is where Smith talks about how people that are hungry takes them longer to rejuvenate. But someone who's thirsty, if you give them water, they rejuvenate very fast. And in fact, Evans jumped right up and said, let's go to the water hole.
They were in an area that's now called Skull Valley. Skull Valley is 50 miles south of Salt Lake. And once they got up to the Great Salt Lake, Jedediah Smith was perfectly oriented, and they kept making their way north.
Well, Smith and his companions had long been given up for dead. In fact, it was thought the entire party must have been wiped out.
Come on.
What is that, Jed? Hey, Jed! Boys, come on, hey!
And here they come, out of the mountains, like ghosts.
Over his 2-year journey, Jedediah Smith has traveled more than 1,000 miles,
Jed.
crossing 2 deadly deserts at the forbidding Sierra Nevada mountains.
All right, come on. Jed, hey. Hey.
All without losing a single man of his expedition.
Somebody get some water! Some water!
For almost any other man, a journey like this would have been impossible. But Jedediah Smith sets out on yet another epic journey just 10 days after making it back alive.
You see Jedediah Smith, and you have to ask yourself, what is driving him? Because it's not wealth, although he became wealthy. It's not fame. He didn't seem to be interested in that.
The first American to cross the Mojave Desert into California. The first American to explore California. And then, first American to cross the Sierra, and the first American to cross the Great Basin. But he opened up the West in a way that none of the other mountain men could claim to have done.
Today, he would have become an astronaut probably, and then he would have volunteered to go to Mars.
He saw himself as a real visionary, and he wanted to open up this vast new land, and he wanted to share its wonders with all the rest of America and the world.